Welcome into a most glorious edition of Fantasy Baseball today, one where we will be highlighting outstanding statistical achievements as well as unfortunate downfalls on our 2022 award show known as the Breadsticks. I am a completely overdressed Frank Stampfl, joined by the dapper Scott White and an elegant Chris Welsh on Thursday, October 13th. Today on the show, we do have our awards to hand out, Arizona Fall League updates, and the Welsh will give out his favorite horror movies for those so inclined to partake this time of year. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Scotty, great jacket, new setup. The Braves have tied up the series. How you feeling, man?
I'm riding high, I guess. Now, when you talk about us looking dapper, I mean, for the people who are just listening, we are spiffed up for this awards ceremony. I am in, a sports coat. Not my best, I'll point out. This is the only one that was in my closet. Here's a funny thing. I have all my good jackets stashed in the office, to shoot video at the CBS office, which I have not set foot in since 2019. So they're still hanging there at my unoccupied desk, presumably. I mean, maybe they threw them out. Who knows? This is all I've held on to. Yeah. It's one of those situations, because of course I could go back now. The reason I haven't in so long is, obviously all the COVID stuff, but that's long past. I could certainly go in the office if I wanted to. It's just one of those situations where the longer you go without doing it, the more awkward it feels to do it. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know.
Like if I haven't gone yet, like it's just going to be extra weird when I do. And so those jackets are just going to collect dust, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and why would you want to open up the possibility, Scott, of you going in, someone noticing you and say, hey, man, why don't you come in here more often? It'd be nice to see your face around instead of just working from home all the time, right? It's like,
yeah, I mean, I'm not so worried about that, but yeah, sure. I hear what you're saying. Now, what's funny is, Frank, you're wearing the jacket that you wore at your wedding.
That's right.
Now, this is interesting because, I don't know, like a lot of times women with their wedding dress, which they put a lot more thought into, a lot more money is spent on them. And, they'll put them in mothballs and preserve them for generations to come. But you just use your coat as a prop. That's the function it serves for the rest of its existence. This is, kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah, 1000%. It's a white tuxedo jacket. When else am I going to wear this in my life outside of a Fantasy Baseball Today award show? So I figured, let's break it out. Let's have a little fun. The Welsh is here, by the way. We went 3 minutes without the Welsh talking. That's got to be a record here. And by the way, for those listening, he might be the best dressed of all. What's going on, Welshie?
Speaking of awkward and speaking of dapper, yeah, you guys might have your jackets and your suit coats and all that, but what am I wearing? Well, a pretty light blue. This would be a suit shirt, a tuxedo shirt is what they would call it. Tuxersey? I don't know. But yes, it's a light blue in the form of Dumb and Dumber. So I think this is very appropriate that I have here. And boy, when Frank told me what we were doing, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have some fun. And we get on, and I was like, by God, Frank, if you guys can't see, the hair is done up, full on white suit, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna have some fun, we're gonna be silly. Nope, just me being the silly goose on here. But yes, please come to the video and check out my very, very wonderful dressed outfit I have going on.
And for those watching us live or on demand, if you're watching that video, please hit subscribe, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, so I introduced the awards as the Breadsticks. Why? What does that mean? Well, I wanted some kind of fun, clever, creative name. The Dundies in The Office. Then we got the SBs, obviously, ESPN. The Breadsticks. Earlier in the season, for those who don't know, we would do the Oh My Goodness Gracious Player of the Night, the standout. That's how we would start off every show. And Chris dubbed the most obvious player, right? Like there's just one player that always stood out above the rest as the Olive Garden breadstick. Now, what does that mean? When you go to Olive Garden, let's say us three went to Olive Garden, they would give us 4 breadsticks. Why is that? So that there would be one more than the amount of people we have. so that it's just kind of this awkward in between, like who gets the last breadstick? Should we order another round of breadsticks? And it's just awkward, but it's just like a standout. There's one extra.
Yeah.
So that's why
So,
we're going.
so they don't have to keep giving you breadsticks. You had to be there, I think, for the origin of the breadstick name, but regardless, that's what we've decided to name these awards. The Fantasy Baseball Today breadsticks.
Does it need like a little like an E on it, like the bread stickies or the bready? I feel like we need like I feel like we're missing that just a little, like the breadies, the bread stickies. That's what I'm gonna go with it.
I'm good with it. Let's do it. And
by the way, is there anything more frustrating than going to Olive Garden and them now? You can tell we're in like any type of a recession when you go and you no longer get your basket of like 6 or 7 breadsticks. They firmly stick to 4, and you have to ask them. I've gone like twice in the last year with my wife, and we're like, we only have 4.
You go to Olive Garden a lot more than I do.
I used to go quite a bit and still could be justified to go, but it is like immediately. My play is they bring the bread and we're like, oh, thank you very much. One more whenever you get a chance. One more. And bring the Alfredo bowl. Those are key plays.
Just put it out there. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. Let's not make it too awkward.
Let them know who's boss.
Quick story about Olive Garden. I tweeted, I went there, I don't know, a couple years ago, and I tweeted out, Olive Garden is to Italian food as Taco Bell is to Mexican food. And the actual Olive Garden account responded to me, and they were not happy.
Were they like Wendy's? Were they like the Wendy's Twitter account? I can imagine what they were saying to you.
No, not like the Wendy's account. Anyway, let's jump in. All these awards can be found on cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball. Scott puts in a bunch of work. There's like 30 of them on the website. We're not going to get to all 30 of them. I think I picked out like 21 of them that I wanted to highlight here. And some names we've already talked about recently, so we don't have to dive as deep into some of those. But the others, we will. And Scott, let's start off with the most valuable hitter in fantasy baseball this season. Wonder who it could be.
It's Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
It's Aaron Judge. He was obviously a prolific home run hitter, 62 home runs, 7th most in a single season, despite what some people will tell you. That is what the official record books show. 62 home runs, very big total. I think the more significant number, 16 more than anybody else. And what this translated to in fantasy is if you're talking about point scoring, which I'm going to use just because it's easier to gauge than 5x5 category scoring. The gap between Aaron Judge and the number 2 hitter, Jose Ramirez, the gap between them in head-to-head points was bigger than the gap between Jose Ramirez and the number 23 hitter, Aaron Judge. Far and away the best hitter, the most valuable hitter, because remember, he wasn't even a first-round pick.
No, he was not. He was a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick in some drafts. I got him in the 3rd round of the TGFBI league, which was a 15-team roto league. So if I was getting him in the 3rd round, he was probably falling to the 4th round in some other drafts. The number 1 overall player in roto this year, Aaron Judge, posted career highs in all 5 roto categories, 311 batting average, 62 homers, 133 runs, 131 RBI, and 16 steals. Scott highlighted the difference between Judge and the next closest hitter. So with that, let's move on to the next one. The most valuable pitcher was Justin Verlander, his first season back from Tommy John at 39 years old, 1.75 ERA, 0.83 whip, just over a strikeout per inning. He had 21 quality starts over 28 outings and also had 18 wins on the season. Well, something that stands out to me for Justin Verlander, and this is obviously very nitpicky because I just read off his stats and he was amazing. 11.6% swinging strike rate was his lowest since 2017. Will you have any hesitation in taking a 40-year-old in round 2 next year?
I think I will have some hesitation with it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the K per 9, when you're looking at some of the top guys, especially if you're just sorting by WAR, you're seeing a lot of high K per 9s, and Justin Verlander's doesn't reach the 10 marker. By the way, just some random thing. I don't know if it's some of the different camera angles. Watching the first playoff game the other day, and it was TV. I don't remember if it was TBS or whatever, but boy, Verlander looked the oldest I've ever seen him. And I watched him plenty this year, just how the camera kept coming on his face. And I was just like, oh my God, he looks so old, so incredibly old. I'm worried about the overall drop in age for a lot of these guys. He has been he's been the guy that's kind of avoided it in general. But sure, the K numbers are coming down a little bit. You're seeing him get a little bit hit in the playoffs. The cost is always my problem. And I guess at the end of the day, have a issue with the cost on second round pitchers, especially if there's going to be any, I don't call it a wart, but 40 years old. That's something that holds as much weight as holding that against Jacob deGrom for injury proneness, I think, to some degree. So yeah, I probably will have some hesitation to that cost, because as many of these guys, like, we are going to end up paying next year for what they did this year. It's just Verlander's consistency is always going to walk with you. Scott, where are you going to have Verlander as far as SPs?
Well, I was going to ask you the same thing, because this is something Frank and I talked about toward the end of the season, the struggle to rank the top tier pitchers, which I think is very deep. And there's a second tier that could easily bleed into it. I see it as kind of a group of 7, Verlander being clearly in that group. I think I'm going to have him toward the top of that group because of the consistency, because I kind of like how the older guys have proven their durability in the way guys like Shane McClanahan and even Corbin Burns to an extent haven't. That being said, will I take them in round 2? I mean, the truth is I'm probably not taking any of those 7, considering I'm going to be out on investing big and investing early and starting pitchers again.
Agree.
That's a stance I've already taken for next year. So I am going to have Verlander higher in that group, but it's probably a moot point for my own, the way I plan to build my own teams.
The one bonus you could have is based off of like that tier of 7, him being so old, he might be the guy that falls to that back end, and he could be the one that gets priced into being able to draft. We really don't know at this point on what the cost is going to be and how people are going to pay for it. But if you're talking even like 15-team roto, he could fall into the back end of the second round, or if people just move away from it and are fearful of the age, he's going to be the one that you're going to have the opportunity to get later in rounds, I think, more so than even the Ceases or the McClanahans or obviously the Corbin Burns.
And it reminds me of his 2019 season, which was also fantastic. Before the shortened 2020, people were also scared off to draft Verlander then when he was old and he was coming off a great year. And it just kind of reminds me of the same thing. Now he is, 2-3 years older, but he was amazing once again this past season. I am in an early draft, Welsh, because clearly I have issues, but this is a draft that we're playing out. Would you like to guess what number starting pitcher Justin Verlander was off the board?
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna say 2 or very early.
Put a 1 in front of that. SP.
He was number 1. Okay, I figured in very early drafts he would be almost near the top, and I think that'll wane a little bit as we go. But wow, number 1.
No. I said put a 1 in front of that. SP 12.
Oh, 12.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
12.
I completely.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I heard that completely different. I thought you meant like 1 over. He was the 12th SP.
Yeah.
Who were the? Can you give me the 3 that went ahead of him? Just like the first, like I guess what that would be, 11, 10, and 9.
Scherzer went just ahead of him. Jacob deGrom, Julio Urias.
I mean, I'm not taking Scherzer ahead of him or Urias. I don't think.
Yeah,
I would take deGrom.
But also Aaron Nola.
What's funny is, like, I think you can make a case for deGrom, Verlander, and Scherzer to be the top 3 pitchers drafted next year, and they went 9th, 10th, and 11th. You said 11th or 10th, 11th, and 12th. That's but that goes to show you how deep starting pitcher is at the top. I mean, how deep it is throughout, really.
But it also feeds to the point that I literally just said, where it's like, you're going to get them a little bit later than they probably should, which is I think we all might be enticed a tiny bit by some of the older pitchers because, the new shiny toy, you're going to have Alcantara, you're going to have McClanahan and Cease near the top, but then you're going to just start seeing that middle. Where is Garrett Cole going to go? And all these guys going ahead is going to just put these guys in your lap potentially for late second, early third. Yeah. If I can get a 3rd round Verlander, I'm probably going to jump on that, if I'm being honest. I'm not a big high SP guy like Scott said as far as high investment, but that might be enticing if it gets into the 3rd round.
The most improved hitter this year, according to Scott White, was Nate Lowe, and he was fantastic. The number 7 first baseman in Roto, number 13 in head-to-head points. That disparity is so interesting to me. He did walk less this year, but it feels like it shouldn't be that big. Anyway, he went from a 771 OPS in 2021 to an 851 OPS this past year, hitting 302, 27 home runs. And how did he do it? He lowered his ground ball rate. He raised the launch angle, crushed left-handed pitching. Scott, would you rather, I know you've already ranked first baseman, take Nate Lowe, or someone we'll talk about a little bit later on, Vinny Passport?
Yeah, it was a tough choice between those two. And let me confirm how I have them ranked before I say it. Okay, so I do have in 5x5 scoring, I have Nate Lowe 1 spot ahead of Pasquantino. However, in points leagues, Pasquantino with that great strikeout to walk ratio, I have him ahead of Lowe.
All right, so taking the easy way out there. This guy in Roto, this guy in head-to-head points. But I do think it makes sense. All right, that is Nate Lowe. The most improved pitcher was Kyle Wright. He was your lone 20-game winner with 21 wins on the season. The SP 16 in Roto, SP 11 in head-to-head points. Entering 2022, Kyle Wright had 70 major league innings pitched with a 6.56 ERA and a 1.69 whip. This past season, 3.19 ERA, 1.16 whip, nearly a strikeout per inning, 56% ground ball rate, leaned all the way into his curveball, which was one of the best in baseball this past season. Welsh, I think I'm going to be a little bit hesitant on Kyle Wright, and I don't think I have a reason to be because the ground ball rate's really good. Swinging strike rate was fine. Everything lines up. He's on a really good team, but it's like you said before, you're buying this past season statistics. I'd rather just try and find next year's Kyle Wright, a former prospect who can break out. Not, I mean, obviously not in this way, but that's going to be my mindset, I think, with Kyle Wright. What do you think?
I'm in agreement with you on this. I feel like especially the out of nowhere 20 win chasers we've done in the past. Ian Kennedy immediately came to mind when I kind of was thinking of this. I was going to actually kind of turn this question a little bit because easy answer is just like, yeah, I'm going to immediately be with you on it. If we're going to be paying really, really high costs, if we're going to be paying for 21 win Kyle Wright, I'm probably not going to be in. Though I like the ground ball rate. I like where the strikeouts went. He's in a great team. The context works. What I was curious about was, Scott, was this tough for you at all for this one? Because I think most of these have been pretty standard. The Nate Lowe one could have gone a couple different directions, but maybe it's going to become about more the definition of what is this? The most improved pitcher. I look at multiple guys and I kind of think they could have been on this list. Was this one tougher than any of the ones we've talked about so far?
I mean, there were a lot of improved pitchers, but most improved, Kyle Wright was on nobody's draft board coming into the year, and he became the major's only 20-game winner. In the Scott White Dynasty League, which is 24 teams deep, it's point scoring, but because it's 24 teams, starting pitching is stretched insanely thin. And even in that league, he went undrafted. I picked him off. I picked him up with the first run of Fab. And this was what was that?
I said, nice pat on the back there, Scott.
Like, no big deal. Nobody picked him up. All 23 people passed him up until one smart person came swooping in.
It happened to be me. But the point is that he happened to be, he didn't even get drafted in that league. So, this was actually, I thought, a slam dunk. I guess obviously Shane McClanahan improved, and
that's kind of where I'm going with it. Like, I think there might be a terminology thing because I might argue that Kyle Wright might have been technically the most valuable, like even more than what we were just talking with Verlander. If you're going to make the case in a 24-man league, he didn't even get drafted and he came in, like what he did based on that, the value is so exponential. If we're talking about most improved, the only little arguments I guess I have with that, again, and Kyle Wright's just phenomenal. But it is ironic that I don't think a lot of us are going to hold that weight into next year. But McClanahan went from kind of the same general range as Verlander. And, Verlander's done it before. McClanahan has completely changed the scope of who he is. He is now in the elite territory of pitchers. Also, Zach Gallen. Those were the two that jumped to my mind, was McClanahan and Gallen, that could have gone from next level change as far as improvement. But we're also kind of like, we're poking here at the terminology and stuff like that. Kyle Wright belongs in this discussion, but that's why I asked, was this tough? Because I would have battled with a multitude of different ways. And how you just said it, I might have been like, well, was he the most improved or was it just the most valuable? But I guess it worked when you win 21 games and you also were undrafted. It plays.
Yeah. And I'll also say that I understand the knee-jerk reaction of, okay, well, he's not going to win 21 games again next year because you can't bet on any pitcher doing that 2 years in a row. But I think the ways Wright improved were legit, and I think he's likely to get passed over, at least among fantasy experts, quote unquote. Like, I don't think he's going to be drafted as a top 30 pitcher. And in that case, like, I'll be all over that. Like, Kyle Wright or Logan Webb next year. I'll take Wright personally.
Let's see. In this draft, Kyle Wright went 2 rounds later than Logan Webb. And of course, like, this is the first draft of the offseason, so I'm sure things are going to change quite a bit. But just kind of eyeballing it, he kind of went like the SP 30 to 40 range. Right around Nick Lodolo, Blake Snell, Jesus Luzardo, George Kirby.
That
I was just about to say, who'd you rather have?
Tag.
Kyle Wright or Logan Gilbert next year?
I think that's the right range. I think they'll probably both be ranked right around SP 30.
I think I'm going to go Logan Gilbert.
I think Gilbert, but man, he's got his issues too. I mean, lots of hard contact. He looked better down the stretch, just leaning into that slider more. But
playoff 2 run, if you want to throw out, Eno Saris had some really great coverage about how he literally just decided to throw a brand new scoped curveball in the playoffs, 6 more inches of vertical drop on it. He threw a completely different pitch. He's one of the hardest working pitchers I've ever seen in my life. I've been touting him for a long time. He kind of did waver, but coming into the playoffs and dropping a brand new pitch that was getting whiffs, it's pretty phenomenal. But either way, it's big arguments across the board. I would go Gilbert in that, but it's probably also still not giving Wright his own due.
Yeah, I think I'd go Gilbert over Wright too, just for the upside. But the point is, I mean, Wright, you're going to be drafting Wright as your number 3 next year, maybe number 4 even. It's not going to be a situation where he's going like last year. Julio Urias was the Majors 20-game winner, and he ended up being a top 12 pitcher the following year. Right. Wright's not going to be valued that way.
Uniquely to him, which is going to be unlike so many others, is his name just still doesn't fit for so many people that how often do you see a 20-game winner not go as a top 30 SP? It might be the first time we ever really see something like this. He is probably one of only a handful of pitchers I could even think of right now that doesn't get the extra benefit of a boost because, if we wanted to play a game, we're not going to play it here, but start going and throwing 21 wins on Logan Webb or put them on Pablo Lopez or put them on Logan Gilbert. And we're talking about probably a guy that is going to be up in a top 15 overall. Only a handful of really successful pitchers this year could you put 21 wins on and them not be a top 30. It's probably guys like Merrill Kelly, Miles Michaelis, and a Kyle Wright. It feels like that would be kind of the group. So he will be an interesting value the more we talk about it.
Who was the most improved in the midseason? That would be Reed Detmers, who was sent down in late June. And at the time, he had a 4.66 ERA, less than 7 strikeouts per 9, a 9% swinging strike rate. Once he returned, a 3.04 ERA, 9.9 K per 9, 13% swinging strike rate. He had this revamped slider. He was throwing it harder. He was leaning into it more. And Scott, I think Reed Detmers kind of fits the mold of trying to find the next Kyle Wright. Now, he's not going to be undrafted. He's going to be drafted in most leagues, but he's going to go much later than a Kyle Wright. He is a former top prospect, like Kyle Wright was, and he made a change. He, started throwing the slider more, and if he leans into that even more next season, then I think we could see that breakout. What do you think about? Are you buying into this Reed Detmers breakout?
Yeah, I am. Now, he did have a rough stretch in September after initially looking great. And then I think his final start of the season was also terrific. But the bottom line is this was a highly drafted pitcher with ridiculous minor league numbers who, upon first reaching the majors and this year also before getting sent down, he looked like he had nothing. Like his stuff was mush. And I say that knowing he threw a no-hitter in there, but it was like a no-hitter with 3 strikeouts or whatever. It was like it didn't look like he was viable long term. And so now it does. And I don't know if he's going to sustain the exact numbers he put up after returning. 3.04 ERA, 9.9 K per 9. There'll probably be more ups and downs along the way, but at least Reed Detmers looks like he has a future now. And the upside seems pretty impressive.
The biggest collapse this season goes to Pablo Lopez, a 1.05 ERA in his first 7 starts, 4.60 the rest of the way. I mean, that's really the majority of the season for Pablo Lopez. I looked into it. The walks and home runs were the biggest culprits for Lopez's demise throughout the season. Well, she has a nasty changeup, but his fastball changeup combo accounts for 75% of his pitches that he throws. I think unless he can develop a third pitch, his curveball's actually really good. He just throws it around 8-9% of the time. He's gotten good results on it. Unless he finds a third reliable pitch, I think Lopez kind of just sits in this mid to high threes ERA, maybe even a 4 ERA kind of guy, unless he gets that third pitch.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this is also really not the mixture of like a massive 2-pitch pitcher. You're really not wanting to go change up fastball the whole way. You want to have a little bit more of a breaker, especially just to change the full eye on pitches. So if you're going to be a primary guy like that, you want to have more of a development, even more into like maybe 3 or 4 more pitches, or 3 or 4 total pitches that he's getting out there. The interesting thing with him was all the trade rumors that went on. And I kind of wonder if that played a role, because they're such a great pitching development organization, the Marlins are, and they've got a whole excess of them, that I would either hope that they really, really hone in on him this year to help with that mix, or what if he gets moved and that destination is a spot where maybe the team is going to overhaul him. We see that happen in a lot of different places. I mean, imagine if he went to, the Mariners or the Guardians or something like that, where, they might, I don't know the analytical look that's going on between the Marlins and many others, but maybe it's going to be significant. But the bottom line is like, yeah, if nothing changes, I think we're still in the same place of him, a guy that lacks massive strikeouts. I think he had a career high walks this year, not leaving batters on base very well, and probably going to be hovering around a 4 ERA the whole season. Rather have Kyle Wright than him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know the Yankees were very interested in him around the trade deadline. There was a very late rumor close to the deadline that they were trying to get him. So maybe they're in the mix for him, but it wouldn't surprise me if Pablo Lopez is moved this offseason. Scott, the next award is called the Bobby Big Bat. What is that?
Exactly what it sounds like, Frank. Just a way of awarding somebody who made a big power contribution in a way that was, kind of unexpected. A lot of power for cheap. And,
Who was Bobby?
Who was Bobby?
Yeah, who I need to know. Who was Robert?
Bobby Big Bat. I'm just going for the alliteration there.
Okay, just making sure. This is
like an imaginary player when I was a kid on the playground. Bobby Big Bat is up.
Oh, so like what was it? What was it in like MLB MVP when they couldn't have Bonds in there? Joe Dowd or whatever. Is that's your Joe Dowd? I think his name was.
Best baseball game ever, by the way. I mean,
hands down.
Love the callback to that.
Like MVP 99? Was that what that was? MVP 99?
That was
I think it was
MVP 2005.
05 right? With Manny Ramirez on the cover. Yeah.
And that was Dowd? Okay. All right.
Yeah. That game was.
Let's call this the Joe Dowd Award. Maybe this could be the Joe Dowd
Award. I think it was.
John Dowd Award.
Well, this year's John Dowd was Christian Walker. So, Welsh, I'm coming right back to you here. One of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Obviously, you're out there live in person. Actually, I don't know Diamondbacks games you go to, or even like, why would you? But Christian Walker had an ADP of 495 in the NFBC last year, a complete afterthought. He finished as a top 5 first baseman in Roto, top 8 in head-to-head points. He had a career high 36 homers, career high 94 RBI, and some tangible changes. Lowered the strikeout rate, hit the ball really hard, 11.5% barrel rate. How much are you buying this Christian Walker breakout?
I'm a buyer. Funny story too. People know this story, but I inadvertently hurt Christian Walker a couple years ago at Diamondbacks camp, where it was right before COVID happened, I think it was right before COVID happened, and he was working on a side field, and I went over to talk to him, and I said, "Hey, Christian," and he walked over, and the side field goes onto this concrete, and he walked on the concrete, and he absolutely went just feet up onto the ground. I helped him up. And then the next day, Roto World's report was Christian Walker is out for a couple days due to soreness. And I was like, oh no, I am hurting Christian Walker. Stay away. I feel so bad. Because I kind of like caught him when he was walking and I said his name and he kind of turned and then those cleats just went out. None of that matters to what you were saying though, but that's my Christian Walker thing in my head. Here's the funny
thing. So you were saying this was heading into 2020 before the COVID shutdown. So Christian Walker had a breakout season in 2019, hit 29 homers.
So I knocked it down a little bit.
Then disappeared for 2 years.
And I've been away from him for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's like he's recharged his battery. One of the most fascinating things about him, I mean, the power plays, the ballpark factor as far as, the seeing eye in Chase really does work. But Christian Walker, this felt like it was going on. He had the worst BABIP in the league in the first half at 180. He had a 180 BABIP going in, and he still kept mashing these homers. And we kept saying, man, What if he can just get this improved? What's the batter you're going to get? What if Christian Walker was a 240 to 250 hitter with all these homers? You're talking about a high-end value. And guess what? He ended the year with 242 on his batting average. His BABIP went back up to 248. He had 36 homers and a sub 20 strikeout percentage. This is a guy that you buy on, especially because the Diamondbacks team has a lot more athleticism on it. They're going to be running way more than ever. I think I mentioned on the last show, Rojas and McCarthy both had 23 stolen bases alone. That's not accounting for what a full season of Corbin Carroll is going to be. Alec Thomas, it's a lot more batters in play. I think Christian Walker is the real deal. I would love a little bit more of the all or nothing, and he showed that in the second half. That's like a big thing that you want to buy back in on. He mashed while struggling to hit for contact in the first half, dropped his strikeouts, and improved on the second half. He's a buy, and he will still come massively cheap next year when everybody is paying up for the big first baseman bats.
Just to give you an idea, Christian Walker went in round 14 of this draft that I'm doing. This is a 15-team league.
Yeah.
Think about that. Round
Go.
14 of a 15-team league.
What was
So
it, like 210, 215 overall, something like that?
that's way too much math for me to do off the top.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Wait,
think like 150 and 10 and
I have Walker as my 9th first baseman for next year. So, and the earliest drafts are always kind of wonky because
Yeah, for sure.
the draft rooms don't even reflect the most current rankings and everything. So everybody's kind of just going top of mind.
his name value just doesn't hold for people. Diamondback, Christian Walker. I agree. He will rise. I don't know if he'll rise above the 10th round, which is really great for all of us.
It would be good because I'm a buyer. Like you said, he finished with a 242 batting average. That was still 15 points shy of his expected batting average. And I happened to look it up for my write-up of my top 20 first baseman. Christian Walker was one of the most shifted upon right-handed hitters this past year.
And you got to love it for the new rules, which, by the way, they're doing out here in the Arizona Fall League. No shifts, all the big bags. We're already seeing what some of that is looking like. And we really do have to account for the non-shift on some of these guys. And there's one of your beneficiaries.
Yeah, I think a left-handed counterpart to Christian Walker, who will be a beneficiary of that, is Rowdy Tellez, Scott, who we spoke about on our previous podcast, and big power with him as well. And I think he can get that batting average up to around a 250, somewhere like that. The Freddy Fleetfoot Award, what is that? Well, it's basically the speedy counterpart of the Bobby Big Bat. And of course, that goes to John Birdie, who led baseball with 41 steals in just 102 games. Still finished just 172nd overall in Roto this season. 240 batting average, 662 OPS. He's a slightly below league average hitter in his career. And we spoke about John Birdie recently, so I don't want to spend too much time on him, but he'll be a steal specialist next year. I don't think there's going to be a lot of hype around John Birdie. Before we hit the break, for those watching live and on demand, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below if you haven't already. For those listening, please help us out. 5-star rating and review on Apple. We're closing in on 3,000 reviews, which is a big milestone. Bosses like that kind of stuff. If you listen on Spotify, you can drop a 5-star rating there as well. And starting next week, we are moving into our position recaps / early previews. So we're going to start with catcher. These are obviously going to reflect Scott's early rankings, which are slowly being added to the site if you want to check those out. And on Tuesday, we're going to recap the catcher position, first half of the show. Second half, we'll look at Scott's early rankings. And then on Thursday, we are going to do dynasty risers and fallers and top catcher prospects to know for next season. So that'll basically be the setup for the next couple of months. We'll just go position by position. One show, redraft, early rankings. Next one, kind of dynasty prospect related on those Thursday shows. Let's take a break and we'll get to some news and notes here on Fantasy Baseball Today. The news and notes. I was watching game 2 between the Braves and the Phillies. Scott, I saw your boy Ronald Acuna hit by a pitch on his elbow. Looked like he was in some pretty big pain. He was running the bases almost like his arm was in a sling. I was like, that's not good. But he was fine. He didn't leave the game. So.
Well, I don't know that he's fine, but he did stay in the game.
They did a test after. They said no structural damage or anything. So it looks like he dodged a bullet.
Good.
Welsh, in a Roto League next year, you taking Acuna or Aaron Judge?
Come on, man. Don't do that. I think I'm going to go with Judge. I think it's still high. I mean, I literally just said like, hey, I don't want to pay for this year, for next year. What is the burger joke? I'll pay you for a burger today, or I'll take a burger today and pay you tomorrow, whatever it is. Like, I don't know if I can get into that, but Aaron Judge was so dominant and also stealing bases and what he did. I don't know how I'm going to go against Judge next year. And, Scott has always been a pretty big proponent of not going nuts about overpaying for stolen bases. There's a little bit of that with Acuna. The power toppled down a little bit comparatively. So would it be worth paying up for a few more stolen bases? Obviously an elite player, but over 4 elite categories. And really, if you think about what Judge did as far as his power numbers are and stolen bases, that's pretty elite. So I think I'm going to go with Aaron Judge.
Yeah, I had the 3rd overall pick in this draft, and I was wrestling with it. I took Judge over Acuna, but it was a decision that took me quite a while to.
Yeah, it is.
To figure it out. Dustin May was activated from the IL and added to the Dodgers NLDS roster. Braves reliever Tyler Matzik needs Tommy John surgery. The Dodgers left Craig Kimbrell off their NLDS roster, and rightfully so. With a 2-run lead in Game 1, we saw Evan Phillips in the 6th inning, Alex Vesia and Brusdar Graterol in the 7th and 8th, and then it was Chris Martin who picked up the save in the 9th. Craig Kimbrell and Chris Martin are both free agents after the season. Obviously, there's so much that can change. They could sign someone. They could trade for someone. It wouldn't surprise me, Scott. But let's say it's Evan Phillips, Vesia, Graterol, Blake Trinan still on the roster too. Who would you lean on just as the main save source for the Dodgers next season, if you had to guess?
Well, in that scenario where they don't bring in a big proven guy and they're the Dodgers, so why wouldn't they? I would guess Graterol would see the majority of the chances in that scenario. They kind of have dangled him as a closer in waiting previously.
Yeah, he throws super hard and doesn't get as many strikeouts as you would think, but does get a lot of ground balls, limits walks and hard contact. So I think I tend to agree. I think Trinan might be in that mix too, but it's close.
Yes, I actually think they could put Trinan in that that 8th inning kind of like best lineup role where maybe he moves around and he could get save opportunities. I have a hard time believing, and I know we're playing this scenario because at the end of the day, there's no way they're going to go in and the closer's going to be between Trinan and Graterol. I refuse to believe that with the Dodgers. There's no chance. But if we were playing that game, I just don't think Graterol would get all of them. I think Trinan would just be moved around. He would be the high leverage guy.
Scott Efros was left off the Yankees ALDS roster, and then it turned out he needs Tommy John surgery, which was a brutal blow to their bullpen. Clay Holmes picked up the save in Game 1 of that ALDS series. DJ LeMahieu will miss the ALDS due to a foot fracture. Can't be that bad if he wasn't ruled out for the entire postseason, but I guess we'll find out. George Springer was diagnosed with both a concussion and a sprained shoulder following his collision with Bo Bichette last Saturday. Springer may also undergo an elbow procedure sometime soon to address a bone spur. And they said even if he has that surgery, he should be good to go for spring training. But George Springer always dealing with something. Division series are underway. Scott Service, what are we doing, man? I mean, he doubled down on his decision to bring in Robbie Ray for the final out of the game. 2 runners on. Yordan Alvarez coming up to bat, who represented the winning run at the time. And Robbie Ray doesn't have experience as a reliever, as a closer. The final out of the game, he doubled down on it today. He said, it was good process, just bad results. I'm not so sure about that. So Yordan Alvarez, monster home run, but no idea what Scott Service was doing in that spot. Let's get back into some of these awards. We have a bunch of them, so let's, try to run through as many as we can. We will get to some Arizona Fall League updates as well. We got some video that will accompany it for those watching on YouTube as well. The best comeback, pitcher edition, Zach Gallen. We spoke about him last week as well. In 2021, he went 4-10 with a 4.30 ERA, a 1.29 whip. He had some elbow trouble. He battled a shoulder in spring training. Then this year, 2.54 ERA, 0.91 whip, over a strikeout per inning, and just a ridiculous second half. Scott, do you think that Zach Gallen will be overvalued because of that second half? Just reminds me of Jack Flaherty, right? A couple of years ago, he had that ridiculous second half. And he was drafted as like a top 12 starting pitcher the next season.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it going that way, but that happened. What happened with Jack Flaherty was at a time when we were hurting for aces, and I don't think we're in that time anymore. So, if we're gonna make Kyle Wright the standard of comparison, okay, Zach Gallen deserves to go before Kyle Wright. But I think there's a good chance he goes outside the top 20 still.
Ooh, I think there's no chance that he goes outside the top 20. I think 15 is the marker. I told you guys about that end of season mock I did. I passed on him for Strider because I'm a big Spencer Strider stan, but it was a really, really tough decision. But the more I think about it, I actually want to go count. I wouldn't be shocked if it was right around there. Frank, do you know where Gallen went in yours? Because let me guess. I'm going to guess 18.
He went in.
I'm guessing 18th of SPs. I don't know if you can even give us that.
He went in round 5. Yeah, I'd have to do some quick math. Verlander was 12. Wheeler was 13. Shane Bieber was SP 14, who I took. Carlos Rodon was 15. Tristan
I'm
McKenzie,
live counting.
16. And Gallen was 17.
Ooh, that's interesting. McKenzie.
So wait, he was the 6th overall pitcher?
No. He was the
17th of pitchers.
17th.
Gotcha. I thought you were like doing the whole numbers. Okay, so I was close. What did I say? Did I say 17 or 18? Did I nail that?
You said 15, I think, but
No.
I think he'll be in that range. I think 15 to 20. He'll be drafted as a SP2 basically, or if you wait, he'll be your SP1. But yeah, somewhere in that 15 to 20 range, I think. Best comeback hitter edition: Eugenio Suarez, who finishes a top 12 third baseman in both roto and head-to-head points. Partially because the position is just so terrible, but he went from a 198 batting average in 2021 to 36 this past season, which is still not great, but a huge improvement, nearly 40 points, hit 31 homers, 87 RBI, some BABIP luck to get him back on track. Welsh, top of mind. I know Scott has already published his third base rankings. Do you think Suarez will be drafted as a top 12 third baseman next year?
Ooh, immediate reaction is I want to say no, but when I think about the position itself, there's a possibility he could sneak in there because of the homers. Like doing a quick look just on Fangraphs and pulling up from a WAR perspective. I mean, he ended up having the 8th. Yeah, I'm going to stick with, well, you know what? I'm going to say yes now because I think he'll be right around like between 10 and 12. I just can't see him being inside the top 10 seems a little bit crazy, especially to pay for. I just don't like paying regardless of what it is. And you can, even in roto, sometimes can like punt average and you can get away from average. I just don't like paying for really bad albatross batting average guys. I've been there. I've done that, experimented on a year or two. It just ends up really hurting me. And there's a lot of BABIP help with him. I think Christian Walker's going to go past Eugenio Suarez, and I'd rather have Walker. I know it's not the same position, but at the end of the day, there's a possibility you could be looking at your corner infield for one of those two guys. I'd rather go for more stability at third base than I would with Suarez.
Well, she said 10 to 12 at the third base position. Well, you hit it on the head. Scott has Suarez ranked 11th for.
Oh, okay, there you go.
It is a bad position. Like, I think you got to prioritize third base early if you can, but
it's just not him though. You do have to.
I think there are 9. Then you know, we might disagree on how we rank the 9, but I think there are 9 third basemen that, okay, I feel pretty good about this guy as my third baseman going into next year. And then number 10, it's like, so Anthony Rendon is my number 10, which, yeah, I mean, it shows you where that drop off is. And so Suarez is right behind him.
Who'd you, wow, I know who you'd rather have. I mean, I would rather have Rendon than Suarez, even though that kind of, it stinks. That's gross. But that's why, like, a priority, an early draft strategy, and I think we've done this a gajillion times, like, I will try to make sure I'm not having to make that decision. I will try to make sure and prioritize that I have got my third baseman so I don't have to worry about it, whether it's high-end Ramirez or Bobby Witt Jr. or whatever. And then when I'm thinking about players like that, I can maybe put a Christian Walker in as a corner infielder and just not have to swim in that pool of worrying about needing that corner infield help. Even if it's corner infield, by the way, and it's not just third base starting and you're thinking about your corner infield, I'm still not a big Suarez guy.
Gunnar Henderson, baby. Give me all the Gunnar Henderson.
Gunnar, baby. Hell yeah.
Yep. He's in the 9.
The best comeback midseason edition, Marcus Simeon. Through May, he was batting 199 with 1 homer, 6 steals, and a 540 OPS. From June 1st on, he hit 268, 25 homers, 19 steals with an 810 OPS. We spoke about him recently, so we're going to pass on that for now. The Sizzle Reel Award. Pitcher.
Yeah.
I just assume this is someone that's like sexy, Scott. This is like a sexy pitcher award.
Basically, yeah.
This guy is sexy.
They were making Twitter light up every time they took the field, basically. And I got a pitcher and a hitter. So they are the inaugural Sizzle Award winners. You know, sometimes I just create new awards that happened to fit the player pool for this year. And that's what I did here for the pitcher, Spencer Strider, and the hitter, O'Neal Cruz.
And Spencer Strider, we spoke about him recently as well. Oh my goodness gracious, standout of the season for these guys last week. He finishes a top 25 starting pitcher in fantasy, despite throwing just 131 2/3 innings pitched. Completely ridiculous stuff.
I love him. I'm sorry. I interrupting you. I just love Spencer Strider. Like, I don't even care if I overpay next year. I'm just going to do it because I love that guy. I love watching him pitch. He is I say this in a good way. He's the Alberto Mondesi, and how Mondesi could change the game in a given week. Forget what you know about Mondesi. In 1 week, he could steal like 7 bases, and it just changes the scope. Strider is really good and healthy, and he can change the scope of your week, unlike many, many other pitchers can. And I'll go down with the ship on him next year. This is probably the biggest slam dunk, best award. This is my favorite award that Scott has put here. I think it is the best award to player fit. I love it. Next one, I don't know. I don't know about O'Neal Cruz. Maybe most overrated of the
O'Neal
season.
Cruz broke StatCast. He now owns the hardest hit ball in history. Well, going back to 2015, and anyway, when we could measure such things, at 122.4 miles per hour. And yeah, I mean, like, how many of those batted balls did he have over the course of his, 3 months in the majors? Longer than that, where, basically the Twitterverse went crazy over just how hard he hit this ball. And so that's why he's the Sizzle Reel Award winner. Now, did it actually translate to a lot of fantasy production? In September, it did. He had a really strong month of September. He got the strikeout rate for that month. I think he got it below 30%. It's still bad strikeout rate, but like that might be good enough for a guy who hits the ball, for a guy who impacts the ball like that. I mean, that's kind of how Aaron Judge struck out early in his career. And he's, obviously Cruz surpassed him with that one batted ball, but Judge is about the only player on Cruz's level in terms of how hard he's capable of hitting the ball.
So from September 1st on, O'Neal Cruz hit 288, 6 homers, 5 steals, 29.8% strikeout rate in 29 games. So that is a 30 homer, 25 steal pace over 150 games. And yeah, look, he broke StatCast, Scott. As you said, I don't know that there is a hitter who has a bigger range of outcomes than O'Neal Cruz for next season. Like, you could tell me he's back in the minors by June 1st. You could tell me he's a first
MVP.
Yeah,
he's MVP conversation, 100%. Right. I agree. Yeah.
So he's kind of almost like that Adalberto Mondesi, but for different reasons. It's not injury related. It's more so performance.
And he should be the Pendulum Award next year. He'll be the pendulum. It could swing either way. And maybe it does multiple times throughout the year.
I have a feeling that it will quite a bit. The biggest overachiever goes to Randy Rosarina, who was the outfielder 8 in both roto and head-to-head points, which is kind of surprising because his plate discipline is so bad, but so is outfield. It's just a very bad position.
Well, and he had a 20 homer, 30 steal season. So, even in points leagues, those steals, 2 points apiece, they add up. But yeah, this is the second straight year Randy Orozarena has won this award. And when I say biggest overachiever, I mean, he overperformed his expected batting average by 30 points. He outperformed his expected slug by 70. But considering it's the second straight year he's won this award, biggest overachiever, probably means we can just ignore the expected stats for him after 2 consecutive years of doing that. I'm to that point with Randy Orozarena.
All right, let's do kind of a lightning round here of the rest of these awards so we can get to a few other things here before the end of the show. The biggest underachiever was Jose Abreu, who hit a career low 15 home runs, but still did bat .304. His X-slug was 40 points higher than his actual slugging percentage. Sounds like he'll be on the move for next season. But if he winds up in a warm climate, I could be more interested. You look at his career numbers, he always gets off to slow starts. He's actually talked about playing in Chicago in the cold weather in the early months. It kind of takes him a while to get going. So just something I'm going to watch for the offseason. The biggest weirdo. Well, that's not nice, Scott. Cal Quantrill, 3.38 ERA with a 4.39 xFIP, 4.50 Sierra, 4.31 expected ERA. The only thing, Scott, that stands out here, that's basically all in line with his career numbers. Now, maybe regression just hits this guy all at once, But if he's done it a couple of years in a row, I don't know. Maybe we just trust that he's someone who outperforms his underlying numbers.
Well, I'm going to give him more credit going into next year than I did going into this year. Now, what does that mean in terms of ranking? As deep as starting pitcher is, it probably still means he's not going to rank that high for me. I'm thinking just top of mind outside the top 60. But 15-game winner, and yeah, he like Randy Rosarina is a back-to-back winner of this award. Biggest weirdo. I have no idea how he makes it work. It's not ground balls. It's not weak contact. It's certainly not strikeouts, but 2 years in a row, he has made it work.
The biggest victim of the shift award goes to Corey Seeger, who hit 245 with a career high 33 home runs. His expected batting average was 283. He also hit just 242 against the shift. That number is 304 for his career. So I do think he was a little bit unlucky against the shift this past season. The one Scott won't shut up about, you know who it is. Vinny Pasquantino, who hit 295 with 10 homers and 832 OPS, one more walk than strikeouts, and hits the ball hard. The batted ball distribution looks great. He crushes lefties. Welsh, I asked Scott this earlier in the show. I don't know if you answered, but Vinny Pasquantino or Nate Lowe, what do you think?
Ooh, that's a really tough one. I'm going to go with Nate Lowe, but I think these guys are back to back with each other. Whenever I can get like a first baseman who's going to show off big power and show off big batting average in a lineup where, let's just throw this out. You just said that Corey Seager, one of the biggest victims of the shift. We also had another Ranger on this list, and Marcus Simeon. If Simeon can be up to snuff the whole year, shift unaffected by Corey Seager, you have more powerful offense. It's just a thing that you can kind of price in with Lowe. Royals are a little bit still of an anomaly. I love Pasquantino, and I'll be in, especially with that type of walk to strikeout ratio and the big power. And maybe they're going to be back to their old ways if Mondesi's back and they're running and there's just more RBI opportunity. But I'm going to go with Lowe. But it's a great question.
All right, a few more I wanted to highlight. These are the Mr. Awards. Mr. Durability went to Sandy Alcantara. Mr. Wait, who? Joey Meneses. Joey 2 hits, who was amazing down the stretch. Mr. Look who finally decided to show up. Max Muncy was basically Max Muncy over the final 2 months of the season. Maybe that elbow finally got healthy for him. And Mr. Thanks for the Memories, Nelson Cruz, who hit just 234 with a 650 OPS and says that he will be back for his age 43 season, but
he's done as far as fantasy is concerned. I will boldly say.
I was going to say, like, maybe he's back in mind and spirit, but in body, Nelson Cruz is no longer. Alas, we have made it to the end. These were our breadsticks or bread stickies or breadies or whatever we want to go with. 2022 Fantasy Baseball Awards. By the way, the breadstick name did come via David Turner, someone on our Fantasy Baseball Today Facebook group. So we do appreciate the help there. Welsh, it's time. Let's talk a little AFL. You're obviously out there watching the Arizona Fall League. For anyone who hasn't already, follow at Is It The Welsh. What are you waiting for? You want some AFL updates? He is the best one to follow for all of them. And let's start off with one of the top prospects in the game, Cardinals third baseman, Jordan Walker, who is just 4 for 16 early on. 2 home runs, one of which you caught on video. I'll pull that up here while you're talking. But kind of off to a slow start. But I don't think that really changes how we view Jordan Walker here in the long term.
No, it was a good, he definitely had a slow start. He's just such a big guy. You can see up on this video here that I posted. As I said, I'm going to bless everybody with it. And if you have you put the sound on for that real quick and put it back to the hit, you can turn it off after, but just listen, if you can get a little bit. You can kind of get that. Just think about the scope of where I am in the stadium, and there's people there, and he absolutely crushed this. He's definitely seeing the ball a whole lot better. He's playing a whole lot more. He's exclusively at right field. He was getting some of the low treatment early on, and he was hyper aggressive. Here's one of the deals with this team as well. I'm actually going to go look because this might be an incredible thing that happened coming into tonight. This team has not won a game. The Salt River Rafters, which has the Diamondbacks, the Rockies, the Cardinals, the Detroit Tigers, and it's going on currently, and the game is tied. This team has been so bad, and I just want to point out here, but any offensive stats, I have to reiterate this always. You have to take it all with a grain of salt. This has been so bad that the Salt River Rafters gave up so many runs last week that they called the game in the 8th inning because they ran out of pitchers. That is what has been going on. We are seeing 18-run games. So you got to be careful, and we've got to pick apart some of this stuff. But Jordan Walker, one of the top prospects in baseball, is a physical freak, steals bases. I think he stole 19. I'm forgetting what the number is now last year, almost 20. And it looked like there was a little bit of a book on him early, but what he does is he demolishes mistakes, which is something that you love. Now, I had a little bit of a change in my ranks, though, because it's interesting seeing Jordan Lawler and him as teammates together. And I've come to the realization there is no way I could have Walker above him. Even though he is more physically talented, Jordan Lawler is unmatched in how just nothing phases him, and he's a 5-tool player. Walker's going to have some batting average issues. You can really see it. And he's going to adjust, and he's probably going to hit for over 300 because everybody's going to. But when someone makes a mistake, there's probably not a player in the AFL more dangerous than Jordan Walker. So he's starting to heat up. So dynasty owners, you can kind of take that into note, whether people pay attention or not. There might be a buy or even a sell opportunity on Jordan Walker right now.
Jordan Walker, 20 years old, played 119 games at AA this past season in the Cardinals organization. Scott, do you think we will see Jordan Walker with the Cardinals in 2023?
Oh, yeah, at some point. And doubtful it's going to be opening day, but at some point next year, he's going to be somebody I would expect who, certainly in those 15-team leagues, probably gets drafted to stash away just in the hopes that he becomes a worthwhile third baseman for you.
All right, let's move over to Jason Dominguez, who got off to a slow start, but is hitting much better recently. He's running. He has 3 steals as well. And Welsh, tell me what you've seen from him so far, and just ultimately, where are you at now on Jason Dominguez? Because I feel like he's bounced up and down some prospect rankings. Is he like a top 25 guy for you, top 50? What are you thinking about Dominguez?
He's right around the top 25. I've been pretty steadfast where people move off of him. This first video here, you can also play if you want to hear the sound again. It's always nice to hear the sound of some of these hits because this is something he's been doing when you hit it. Right here is... You can kind of get a feel for that, is constant contact, not the email service, but the Jason Dominguez. He is consistently making barreled contact here. The problem is there haven't been results. There have not been results. He had one very early on. I tweeted out that would have without question been a home run. We had 50-mile winds coming in and it took it away. His pitch recognition has been very impressive for a young guy. I think he's shown a better eye than guys like Jordan Walker. He's not pitching at dumb pitches. He waits. He's not afraid to walk. There's another video I had where he actually he got hit, and then he kind of you can kind of see him shake it off a little bit. He got hit right in the shoulder. Kind of gives the pitcher a look. He gives a little bit of a smile. He ends up getting pushed over to second, and then with Zach Geloff up, he flies. Look at this speed right here, if you can see. I know the podcast doesn't help, but boom, he is fast for as bulky as he is. The problem I always still have is his size. He is aggressively small when you see him in person. Like, it is almost jarring, but he is one of the bigger, thicker athletes out here. He has game-changing speed, and my mantra has been, I'm just not going to move off where people were moving in post 100. He has a lot of talent. He has crazy talent that is going to play and really might play in fantasy in the long term, especially since I've seen his pitch recognition, which that is the thing I thought was going to fall apart. To be honest with you, his defense is the worst of all of it. That might hold him back a little bit, but he has walked. He's stealing bases. He's aggressive on the base paths. He's making really, really good contact, even though the results aren't there. That's one of those things that's going to sneak behind the box score, is how he has been barreling up the ball. I'm pretty encouraged, and I think he should be considered a top 25 prospect. And whether you want to stay around for the cost or not, I think it's a great time to own, because I think he's just going to move up and up, and being up to AA and being in the AFL with the eyes, his value is going to be there if you want to move off of it. And I wouldn't blame you if you did, if you can get back to that top 20 value.
All right, so top 25 says the Welsh. Scotty, we're a couple of years away from seeing Jason Dominguez with the Yankees, or any team for that matter. But do you think that he deserves to be a top 25 prospect for dynasty purposes?
I think so. I mean, I don't keep up prospect rankings as consistently as the Welsh does, but I've had Jason Dominguez as high as that before. And obviously his stock dropped a little bit last year, but I think it came back up a bit this year. 19-year-old, he reached AA at the end of the year and had a good season between 3 levels. So I think he remains pretty big dynasty asset.
Twins prospect Austin Martin is 12 for 24 in the AFL with a home run, 3 doubles, and 4 steals. Former 5th overall pick back in 2020. Came over to the Twins in the Jose Barrios trade, and 92 games played this past year. He was not good. 241 batting average, 2 homers, 35 steals, sub 700 OPS. Well, does a big AFL rebuild confidence for you in Austin Martin as a dynasty asset, or would you use this as an opportunity to sell high?
Okay, so I really like Austin Martin. I also personally like him. I've talked to him multiple times here. He currently leads the AFL in hits. He's second in runs, I believe, and he leads in stolen bases. And you can see right here, this is one of a couple hits that I got on this video. This is a single. He ended up hitting a double. And I actually commented to someone to say, hey, listen, I just don't know where the power is going to go. He definitely kind of moves into pitches. He's got a great contact approach. His body has not progressed. He has not progressed as far as showing a power swing whatsoever. So I just don't see where it is. Literally the next day he hit a homer out here. I just want to point out he finally hit a homer and he did that. But he has been one of the better hitters here. He's also been very aggressive on the base path. A lot of bases being stole out here, which I think is very interesting. This is the double. I posted he hit a single, a double, then another single. This one I really liked. He turned on it on the pull side, and he showed off his speed, just getting into second base incredibly easy. He had got hit by a pitch, I think, a little bit later on and stole the base. He's a great ball player. He is going to be an MLB ball player. Not all these guys are. I know that's a weird statement that I said. Not all these guys are going to make it to the majors or get an opportunity. He will get an opportunity. But will he be an impact player? I've come to terms with, and this is just me, I think you should think of him like a Josh Rojas. And if you're down with that, then you should hold. I think you can get somewhere between 10 and 15 in a full season on homers max. I think you can get somewhere between 20 and 30 stolen bases if he is a full-time player and not a platoon player, because he makes a lot of good contact and he'll take some walks and he's stealing bases. So if that is good for you, then I think it's actually a really good time to buy because no one cares about him. But if the AFL buzz pushes him up and he would win some awards or whatever, I would probably consider moving off of him because I don't think the power is going to be there. So that's on you to decide. But I'm sticking with like Josh Rojas in my mind with him. But I am encouraged that he is actually going to be impactful to make it to the majors.
All right, so maybe a better real-life player for the Minnesota Twins, or in Roto, someone that provides steals. That is Austin Martin we were talking about. Welsh, any pitchers that have been impressing? I know you spoke about how that previous team, I forgot the name already, that their pitching has been
Salt
terrible.
River Raptors.
Yeah, and I assume most pitching has been terrible out there. Any pitchers that you've seen impressing? I know that Kumar Rocker was better in his second start, so I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, a couple quick notes. Ironically, I actually met him today, but Sandy Gaston, disaster, went 1 2/3 in 2 starts, has walked 8 batters in 1 2/3. If you want to have like a perspective of how bad it's gotten, a kid that I saw pitch today was really interesting. He was with the Atlanta Braves. He got traded to the A's. Ryan Cusick pitched today, and he was really interesting, popping like 94, really good command, and he was consistently throwing this curveball that was just making everybody upset and mad. And I think he went 3 or 4 innings. Ryan Cusick, he's an intense guy out there, and the breaking pitch I really liked and how he popped that, and he threw it for a lot of strikes today. Ryan Cusick was pretty impressive. And Kumar Rocker, here's the positive. I didn't get to go to that game, which I'm really upset about. I'm going to try to get to the 3rd game. Kumar Rocker had a similar outing as far as the underlining stuff. He had, I think, 1 strike that was either, swung through or looking strike. That was it through the whole time. He walked a couple again. The AFL propped him up like, hey, it's Kumar Rocker time. Look how amazing he is. It's not, but I still believe in the talent. I love the slider, and the delivery looked different. The delivery was so weird in the first start. He wasn't coming across his body. I actually did this on Tuesdays. I did this stream on my Twitch channel, and I went back to back on the starts, and you can see he really kind of had more of a front motion, and his arm felt more comfortable. I think he was more comfortable. I'm encouraged that he's going to put something together, but I am very cautiously waiting because the underlying stuff, besides him not giving up a run and blah, 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 the underlying stuff is not great right now because he's not getting the fastball going. So we really need to watch him, but it could be rust. There's a million things I'm willing to chalk up for it. But I am 100% going to be at his third start, which I think will be next Monday. I plan to be out at it.
All right. So some Arizona Fall League updates there for those playing in dynasty leagues, or just if you want to find out about some prospects heading into next season. That's why we're here. That's why we got the Welsh here as well. So make sure you follow him on Twitter at IsItTheWelsh for all your AFL updates. And with that being said, if anyone's listening past the 1 hour mark, horror movies. It's October, man. Halloween is coming. For those who are interested, look, the Welsh is a big horror buff. I've learned this about him. I think it was last year, and he's seen it all. So we're going to find out in just a second. Scott, how are you on the horror movies? You like them? You squeamish? You're out? You're in? What are you doing there?
Scott, we should Walking Dead together.
Yeah, we do. And I would say I like horror movies, horror series. I recently watched Midnight Mass. A big fan of everything Mike Flanagan's put out on Netflix. House, The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor being two other like limited series he's put out. Yeah, I can be really into horror when it's done well. The problem is it's often done poorly, and I think that turns a lot of people off of it. But when you find a good version of horror like those 3 limited series I just referred to, then yeah, it can be one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree completely. The Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor, both fantastic shows. If you haven't watched it, if you want something horror related, I would recommend both. I haven't watched Midnight Mass, but I have heard good things about it. American Horror Story is like interesting. I like some of it, but it's probably more of that hit or miss that you were talking about.
It was early on. It changed. Do you know what, though? Maybe the best real life horror thing, Evan Peters is involved across the board, the Dahmer series. That's pretty horrific if you want to experience that. But Evan Peters, who was in American Horror Story for most of the seasons, he's incredible in that. I know that's like very like, oh, everybody loves it, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it really is a great series. Evan Peters is incredible.
Oh, he's so good. He is a ridiculously good actor. So happy to highlight his work. Welshie, what do you got? However many you get, top 3, top 5 horror movies. Let's go. What do you got?
Listen, I'm just going to say, like, I don't think you can even appropriately, like, just rank. I wouldn't even know how to rank because I think it goes for everybody else to be like, these are the greatest horror movies of all time. Here's something I love. I love zombies. I love zombie movies. I'm just a dummy about that. Scott and I, when him and I were doing the shows after, we would spend like 30 minutes more talking about The Walking Dead and how ridiculous it's gotten, but we just loved it. We were committed to kind of keep going with it. And what that gets me is, I think, and this is why I'm saying, like, if you think of like, if you associate Halloween with horror, that kind of maybe changes the scope. One of my favorite movies of all time, and you got to go into zombie stuff, is 28 Days Later. So if you've never seen that, I think that's a classic that you should go see. If you want to change it up a little bit, very interesting. If you ever like foreign horror movies, Train to Busan is a fantastic one that you can watch. It's also a zombie movie. It's just a great movie. They're doing a second one if you can handle subtitles. If you like intensity, go back to old school, like The Shining is, I think, one of the best of all time, but it doesn't quite fall into crazy horror. And there's another one I'm completely forgetting. It was, not Malignant. I'm completely forgetting what it is. It really scarred me. If you want one of those like scarry type of horror movies that was out there. And I think those are a couple of the ones that stand out. I kind of get into like the foreign horror movies have really changed and gotten better. So that's something I would take a look at as well. But go into the zombie series if you haven't already. 28 Days Later, probably the best of all time. Train to Busan. Oh, and also maybe American Psycho. But again, is that truly like a Halloweenish movie? It's a horror movie. Those are a couple really good ones.
Scott, how many of those movies do you think I've seen in my lifetime?
0.
I've seen 2 of them. I've seen The Shining, and I have seen American Psycho. American Psycho is.
You haven't seen 28 Days Later?
Is Adam Sandler in it? No, I haven't seen it.
Hotel Transylvania. That's what you're saying.
I've only seen Adam Sandler movies. Quick story on The Shining. I used to watch wrestling like a ton as a kid. And one time I just kept the channel on, whatever it was on. And The Shining came on afterwards. So you can imagine a little, 8-10-year-old Frankie at the time. I was referred to as Frankie when I was a kid. I'm watching The Shining and I was just scarred for life. So I haven't watched it since. I think I should go back and watch it.
Who was watching over little Frankie back in those
Poor
days?
Frankie.
Yeah.
I remember what it was. Hereditary. Hereditary is a messed up horror movie. If you want to go down that, if you want to like really just question watching those type of movies again, go watch that one. That's a really, really screwed up one. It just came back to me. But poor Frank. But Frank, you should see 28 Days Later. At least see that. It's like, I think it is the best pinnacle of zombie movies. I try to watch it anytime it comes on. It's actually one that I'll watch because Cillian Murphy is like incredible in anything he does. So. If anyone cares anymore.
I don't think this is horror related, but anything that Darren Aronofsky has done is also amazing. But I think that's more of like psychological thriller type things.
Yeah.
Well, he was. I mean, he was the first two. He was involved, I think, in the first year or two of Walking Dead. So, that was, I think, some of the origins. If I'm remembering correct, right, Scott? I believe he was involved in The Walking Dead in the first season or two. Maybe I'm wrong about it.
You may be right, but I don't remember that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's time to wrap up an extremely long, dapper edition of Fantasy Baseball today for Scott and the Welsh. I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again on Tuesday. Bye-bye.